Hey everybody, it's Logan from CriticalEDH with,
I'm Eric.
I guess also from CriticalEDH.
Yeah.
But we're just gonna do sort of a midweek update, and I think we'll probably start to do this more in the future, and kind of tell you where we're at with grinding in tournaments, where cEDH is at from our perspective, and sort of how the last tournament went, or the last event we went to went, and what we're looking forward to in the next couple of days, and then we're gonna check in every week and see where things go and where things are at.
Yeah, I know something that we've talked about as people being like really interested in the tournament scene. There's not a lot of like efficient ways of keeping up with like the cEDH meta or kind of like tide shifts in the format outside of top 16s between like big tournaments. And so I have found that I really enjoy getting to talk to other players about how they're doing, kind of local, $10 buy-in stuff, or even just the small little tweaks that people are making to their decks in between big tournaments. And so hopefully that's something that you guys enjoy as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to cEDH besides just the games that you play. It's about the downtime and sort of, as Shorzy would say, like the off season.
Yeah.
And sort of like, what do you do when you're not playing? Well, I'm probably thinking about it if I'm not working or if I'm not spending time with family and stuff like that. So there's a lot of aspects to playing the game, which include not playing the game, and a lot of us are sitting there thinking, well, how do I change my deck, or what did I go up against last week that I need to sort of address, and that sort of thing. So I think this is just going to be a more of a chill, let's chat about where we're at and what's going on. But I think there's a really cool thing that's going on right now. You were just on Gold Saber's stream.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I felt really fortunate. I'm one of the moderators at the Build-A-Bear Discord. And so we were able to crowdfund enough to commission a playmat by Gold Sabertooth. We're all huge fans of his work. And then he invited me to be on the stream while he was drawing it with Cal, also known as Corn Dog from the Harold's Horn podcast.
Can you talk like a little bit just about the deck and sort of what it is like for people that don't know about Lumra?
Oh, it is a super fun deck. It's very similar to a lot of other mono green piles like Yisan or Selvala in the sense that it operates on a separate axis from the traditional like draw engines. I was just coaching a player earlier today, and something I was talking with them about is how one of the things that I really like about the deck is that it has really small windows when you can make a win attempt. But if you manage to pick your lane correctly, you're almost unstoppable. The way Lumra does that is through infinite recursion of lands, like Sunscorched Desert, that ping your opponents, one damage at a time. Or if people have One Ring Protection, you do infinite loops with Gare Reach Sanitarium and Green Sun Zenith.
That's cool.
And so it just makes a ton of mana. It gets value through a lot of weird cards you don't normally see, like Aftermath Analyst or Tiller Engine or stuff like that. Super fun. A lot of the people in the Discord community are really passionate about it. So we actually set a record for Gold Sabertooth streams, and it was just super great getting to hang out. I also got to talk to him a lot about his experience in tournaments as well. So it was just great.
That stream seemed like more like an interview that you were conducting sort of both ways. Like he was kind of asking you stuff, you were asking him stuff, and I was like, wow, these guys should start a podcast. Oh, wait, he's on my podcast. Yeah, like I'm not giving that talent away for free.
Yeah, next time he's going to have to commission us for content.
That's right. But yeah, we're obviously huge Gold Sabertooth fans here, and I think most cEDH players are. He's one of the big names in the community, and also a really good player.
Yeah, super good. I think in addition to getting to talk to him about his thoughts on land-based decks or what he thinks Legacy or Modern is doing right now, it's also great just to hear him talk about what his experience has been trying to consistently break out of Swiss or kind of close out tournaments, or even just a lot of our conversation oriented around him finding his voice as a cEDH like tournament grinder, which is something I think we can probably really identify with.
For sure.
Because I think sometimes I'll see players who I know are a lot better than me in certain areas, like Jason, who's really good at politicking, and I'll try to copy stuff that he's doing, and sometimes it'll work, and sometimes it won't, and it can be hard to evaluate why emulating their technique didn't work. And so it was really great to get to talk to him about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to deal with you recognizing that I am the main character in this game. Like, it is me. I am not the NPC. I'm not just here to draw cards and go, oh shoot, I don't have protection for this win that I'm trying, or I don't have a way to stop this player. It's like, I need to find those things. I am the one doing these things. I can't rely on these other players. Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of really good insights on that. And I mean, he's just a super interesting guy. He's got a really fun personality, and he always seems to have an opinion about something. I mean, he's got something to say always.
Yeah. I was really impressed. There were a lot of things just over the course of our conversation where he was like, yeah, this is an area that I'm just like absolutely garbage at, like super duper terrible. And then he would go to something else, for instance, like drawing, and he'd be like, I am the shit. And I think that's important. I was really impressed by, I think, just conversationally, I was impressed by that level of honesty and vulnerability. And I can see how that would lend itself well to a cEDH space as well, especially in the vein of it's all about finding what you uniquely bring to the table. And sometimes you will be able to kind of follow in the footsteps of someone else who is good at something you want to be good at, or you kind of already are good at. And there's other areas where you're going to kind of have to forge your own path. Something he was talking about that made me think of you actually is he was talking about the importance in cEDH games of knowing that you can win. And it sounds silly because, I think one of the big things that sets cEDH apart from Bracket 4 at least is the intention of you're playing to win. But in a nuts and bolts, nitty gritty way, once people start putting wins on the stack, it can be really daunting, or it can feel like you're falling behind. And just the importance of like, I'm a cEDH player. I'm good at what I do. This is a good deck. Over my dead body, is anyone going to win this game?
Yeah.
And just like reasserting that like I'm here to win. And this person making a win attempt doesn't mean that I'm going to lose. It means that there's just one more obstacle between me and what I want.
Well, it's like if you can't win, don't play, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with that fuck you mentality of like, and not in like a negative or a mean way, but if someone's trying to win, it's like, no, fuck you, I'm winning.
Yeah.
Like that's my job. I'm doing that.
Yeah, I think that's something you do really, really well. Is I've seen you in a lot of games that are either like really grindy or really sloggy, where people put multiple wins on the stack. You're still there. You're still just marching towards the finish line. And I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, I think being present and being engaged and not checking out when someone's trying to win and just going, well, I don't have the cards in my hand. It's like, okay, well, how can I get those cards? How can I participate in a way that is moving us closer to me winning or stopping this player, things like that. Yeah.
So
cool.
Great stream. Really enjoyed getting to talk to both of them. Super duper happy with the
Can
playmat.
you give us like sort of a rundown of the playmat here? I know we only have it this big on the screen, but on our Twitter, CriticalEDH, you can find some of the cool stuff, and like you can find the link and find the Etsy link and all that stuff. So can you just kind of tell us what some of the elements are about this?
So you have Lumra right here.
Oh, really? This one?
The jewel of the deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah. But then down here you have a blossoming tortoise with all the gold coins and stuff for its shell.
Did that end up being like a staple of the deck?
It is, yeah. It's another card that upon ETB mills and then puts a land from the graveyard to the battlefield.
All right, I'm gonna just tangent a little bit here. Did Hedge Shredder ever see testing?
No. It's one of those cards where I think maybe you've experienced this in Glarb. There is something that works really, really good for the deck, but you only have so many slots for it. Yeah. And so do you build...
Well, I was just curious if not whether it made it or like did it see testing and like was it kind of didn't make that.
No, Blossoming Tortoise completely ate Heg Shredder's lunch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So if you're a Heg Shredder out there, beware. And then we have Lotus Cobra and Nissa here.
Nice. Obviously, it's a landfall deck, so you gotta have those things.
Yeah. Nissa's
Provisioner's in too, right?
Tireless Provisioner is in.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people run some pretty intense artifact hate, like Titania's Song is a big one. But even still, like the ability to make treasures every time a land enters the battlefield is just so powerful.
Yeah.
And then you've just got all sorts of little stuff mentioned. Like you've got Tabernacle, Pendrel, Veiled in the bottom. Very typical cEDH card. You see it in most decks.
Dude, the Field of the Dead, like little hands sticking up. And the coolest thing about the stream was when he was drawing Field of the Dead, I saw him take his hand And like the camera is top down on his iPad setup, and so he's like sitting there drawing on his iPad. We're all watching him and just kind of in awe of his process. Like,
how does he do it? Oh,
but he's like, oh, I need to add Field of the Dead. So he took his hand, he looked at his hand like this, and he turns his hand like this, and he's like, huh. And then he starts drawing a hand based on his left hand.
Yeah, for Lumra's face, I think he just Googled grizzly bear, and then
that really popular photo of a grizzly bear. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was just like, oh, this looks pretty good. And then he got this.
How long was the whole thing?
It was almost 4 hours.
But that's like top to bottom, starting from nothing.
Yeah, so he was moving really, really quickly, but none of it felt rushed.
Yeah. I think that's kind of his style too, is if he spends too much time on it, then it looks almost like too defined and not really. I mean, obviously there's a ton of detail. It's not. It's not that it's not defined, but he has that kind of sketch style.
And then one kind of small anecdote before I really like to hear some more about your week was I was asking him if like a typo has ever made it through onto the final playmat, and he was telling me the story while he was putting Build-A-Bear at the top. And he was so invested in this story about typos that instead of doing Build-A-Bear, he did Build-A-Build.
But that typo didn't make it. Like, he fixed it.
Make it in. But we were joking about it and having a good laugh. It was a really good time.
That was like the last thing he added to.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I want to point out is his typical hat beanie logo. It made it in there, and I like the way it kind of blended in. It's there if you look for it, but obviously it's not taking away from the Lumra.
No, he did a really, really good job with the competition, the composition. Sorry, I mean obviously he does well in competition. He usually ranks pretty highly.
Yeah, I mean, he won like 2 in a row.
Yeah, jealous, man.
Anyway, go check out the Lumra playmat on Etsy, and I think there's only going to be a limited number of those on there. And obviously, check out the Loomer Discord and the Build a Discord, Build a Bear Discord, and those guys are pretty awesome.
Yeah, thanks again to Gold Sabertooth and Cal for being so kind to us and letting us get involved, and just super duper great guys. It was a pleasure working with them.
Yep.
Speaking of things that went well, you started brewing something.
I don't like this that much. I mean, I kind of do in a certain way, but it feels wrong, hence the name.
Wrong side.
Yeah.
Thief X2.
Yeah, so Eric and I are both Rogside players. And I think that's kind of where we started to switch into tournament grinder mode. And before that, we were playing and enjoying cEDH and playing in tournaments, but we were kind of having mixed success, I would probably say at best.
Yeah.
And then we started taking it a bit more seriously, playing what we would call better decks or more functional decks or generically good decks.
Yeah, that's good.
And Rogside was kind of the stepping off point for both of us, I think. And so we had played Rogside. We went from sort of the traditional turbo list into shifting to more of the mid-range waste not and artist talent list that I think we ended up like 1 card off of each other from.
Yeah, you were the one who started it all, looking at waste not and really leaning into those wheels. And then we, I think, kind of mutually of our own testing and collaborating with each other. I think I was on Wheel of Misfortune, and I'm trying to remember what you were on.
I think I was on like Sensei's Top or
Vandal
Blast, or like it was always just a flex slot. There was 1 card slot that I was just like, I don't know, I'm gonna test something random here.
But yeah, it was really, really fun. Still had that kind of like signature, super speedy, super fast Rogside tempo, but also,
well, we were focusing on like wheeling at flash speed in response to someone putting a win on the stack, for example.
Incredible.
And just having Waste Not there. So Waste Not says whenever an opponent discards a card, if it's a creature, you get a 2/2 zombie, which does not help this deck in the slightest. If it's a land, you generate 2 black, which is sick.
Oh, so nice.
And then if it's not either of those things, any non-creature, like say they discard a counterspell or a rock or something like that, you draw a card.
Yeah. So I commonly had the experience of drawing upwards of 18 cards off the average Wheel of Fortune.
Yep.
Which is insane.
Yeah, I love drawing those cards and then finding ad Nas and going, well, I have 14 black mana. What am I going to do with it? Oh, here's a Nas on top of all the cards I just drew.
Yeah.
And that was like a super fun play pattern.
But then I think we both kind of had this experience with Rogsai of, as the meta started shifting into that more kind of mid-rangey place that we are now, having a harder and harder time fighting through those decks that got their Rhystic Study down, got their Trouble in Pairs. And while we're playing out the 18 cards that we draw off Wheel of Fortune, they're drawing 18 cards off of us, which is, I think, kind of what led you towards Glarb a little bit.
Right. Yeah, and then trying to hate out those enchantments, basically.
But now it seems like you're trying to test the waters with Rogsai again and see if there's a way to kind of like tweak it to make it a little bit more compatible with this Rhystic Study world we're in.
Yeah, so Rogsai is notorious for a couple things. One, its speed, and two, its ability to generate a shit ton of mana.
Yeah.
And I think that the mana generation part is awesome, and the speed part is really cool, but the problem is that speed part lends you into cards like Adnaz and Necropotence, both of which really use your life total super aggressively. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, especially in a more turbo-focused meta when Dockside's around. But now that that's not here, those Nas piles and like converting them into a win is super, super hard.
Yeah.
So,
and also there is more time for people to get your life total low before you're able to resolve it. Because, let's say you're in seat like 3 or 4 and your Rogsai like pre-ban, even as early as 2-1, turn 1, if you're going against a Kinnan, they played a ton of rocks, you can get your Adnaz off right there, right then. But now it's been slowed down to more like turn 3, maybe turn 4 if you get really unlucky. And by then, Tibbet's had time to swing in, Crom's had time to swing in.
Yeah.
So not only do you have less tools for your Adnaz, but you're not able to Adnaz as deep either. Very powerful card, so really, really good. But a deck built around specifically Adnazing maybe wasn't quite seeing the success or the consistency that you'd want to see at a tournament.
right, and even looking at like blue farm lists, like Jason's KT list, it runs Nas, but not to draw a Nas pile, which inherently wins the game. It runs Nas to sort of get over the finish line and sort of draw that like maybe 5 or 10 cards where you're like, oh, okay, I have all the tools I need now, and then kind of win. So thinking about that and going, well, okay, if Nas and those piles are having trouble converting, how can I be an active participant in this game versus not a passive one, but one whose only goal is to sort of turbo out that card draw?
Yeah, like you're in one of the best shells, Grixis,
right,
and one of the best combinations of commanders. Even outside of Adnons, you just get so much mana so quickly with Rogrek. So knowing that you've got a little bit less tools in your toolkit, but you're still one of the biggest heavyweights in the division, how can you still find that win?
Well, you can kind of emulate Nas by, say, having 3 Rhystic Studies, for example. So what's nice is because if you have multiple Rhystic Studies, or if you have multiple draw engines or just value pieces, let's say you have an opponent's Smothering Tithe or something like that, you can utilize those resources super efficiently because you still have all these efficient card draw, not card draw, and you have all these efficient tutors and cards that are really powerful but don't really cost a lot of mana.
Yeah. So aside from just the name, I'd love if you could kind of walk me through this list a little bit and help me understand what makes this Rogsai.
So we've kind of focused on things that either copy Rhystic or copy a Smothering Tithe in things like Clever Impersonator, which we've seen in other decks that I play.
Super strong right now.
Consecrated Sphinx in the main board. Can't miss it. Can't leave home without it. And I think the card is really good. It's really easy to sort of get to that 6 mana in this deck where we can just drop like a Cabal Ritual and go, cool, we have 5 black. Now I just need 2 blue. It's really not that hard.
I can see how Consecrated Sphinx would lend itself to that same kind of mentality of build this critical mass of mana, which results in a game-ending level of card advantage. Now, as opposed to doing it in a single step on the stack in 30 life, Consecrated Sphinx, for the most part, if you allow it to go a full turn rotation, especially in a Grixis cell, you will get everything you want and more.
Well, the 2 games that I won with Sphinx, I was able to resolve a Sphinx, and then I would do something like a defense grid, and then either they would let the defense grid resolve, or they would try to respond on top, in which I would start countering their spells, and they would have draw engines, and then I would start drawing cards with Sphinx. So I'm actually out accelerating them. Like, I don't really care if you're going to fight over the D grid. It's not that big of a deal, because I'm drawing 2-1 versus you, because I have Sphinx, and I have a hyper efficient deck. I can make more mana if I need to. I can draw more cards. I can play more spells, more counter spells, things like that. So it's actually a tool that's really good in this turbo/storm shell, where you can use it to fuel yourself and get back up off the starting line again.
Yeah, I think it's a good way of kind of adjusting the paradigm that you're looking to break parity with your opponents, of instead of utilizing a single card, utilizing a scenario like casting a defense grid to create a world where you're able to trade, tit for tat, interaction for interaction, in a way that accelerates your board state. So in the situation you described, you're trading counter spells back and forth, and even though you're 1 against 3, so you've got 1 counter spell to 3 of their counter spells, you're drawing so many cards over the course of that interaction that even if the defense grid doesn't resolve, even if you have to use up every single counter spell in your deck, you've acquired so much raw card advantage that one way or another, you'll probably get what you need.
So the first game that I had, not the first game I won, but the first game that I'm referencing to that I had won, I had a Sphinx, 2 opponents had Mystic Remoras, and I was trying to resolve a defense grid, and we fought over it for so long that I would cast 1 spell, they'd both draw, try to find an answer because they didn't have really much in their hand. I'd draw 4.
Oof.
And then this continued for a while, and then I start to look at my library and go, gee, my library is looking more and more like a limited deck. It's like this big. And then I find Thassa's Oracle, and I find Born Upon a Wind. So I just drop a Born Upon a Wind. They're not answering that, but they're still drawing 2 for me casting it. And they go, okay, well, this is still not the problem. We still need to deal with the defense grid. They throw something else at defense grid, and then I Thoracle on top with no cards in library. Like my library is almost empty. So it's a very kind of strange play pattern. It feels very unnatural for this deck to do things like that, but it also kind of feels right.
It's so interesting because that situation you described of right, like we've seen the popularity of, I think, what's kind of been coined like the reverse Thoracle over the course of the last month, where people tainted pact for whatever part they're missing, and then you do that. Or
just tainted pact at end step, exile most of your library. You already have Thoracle in hand. There's no chance you're going to get Mind Break trapped or anything like that.
But I saw exactly what you described last Saturday when Connor was piloting. Super similar situation, I think. I was on
Connor
Kinnan.
had taken this deck from me. I was playing Glarb, and he had piloted, but go on.
So, like, I get a Rhystic Study out. You get a Mirror Maid. He gets a Copy Enchantment, then draws into a natural Rhystic Study. And then I forget if it was on his turn or on your turn, but super similar scenario. You just get in this huge counterspell war over some relevant piece that, if you squint, says win the game. And by the end of it, he never cast Tainted Pact. He never cast Demonic Consultation. He just cast Thoracle.
Tainted Pact is not very good when there's no cards in your library. I'm like, this card doesn't do anything. Like, do I just cut it from this archetype? Obviously not, but it almost feels like when you're at the end of the game and this is coming to like a head, I'm like, okay, I have Tainted Pact and D-Consult, and I have 10 cards in my library. Do I really care about any of these spells? Like, do they do anything? So it's just weird, especially when your opponents have Rhystic Studies and you have a couple, or you have a Smothering Tithe. It feels like you're all sitting there jerking each other off. But I think this deck is really good at winning that war of I'm going to have more cards, more advantage. The other thing I slotted in was Notion Thief, and we really didn't take out too many wheels. I took out Burning Inquiry and Dark Teal, which are the 2 worst ones. We're still at Windfall and Wheel of Fortune. And those are, I mean, let's not even talk about how good Sphinx is by itself, but if you resolve a wheel into Sphinx, oh my God, you better win the game. If you don't, then I think you're a terrible pilot.
Oh, man. Yeah. Something has gone seriously wrong if you're not able to win off of
Sphinx Wheel.
Yeah, 36 cards,
something like that.
Because it'd be 21 times 2, which is 42 plus 7. So
that's not 36.
No, that's way more than that.
It's 48. No.
Right. So 21 times 2 is 42. Plus
49.
9, so 49. If you get one with 49 cards, oh, that's crazy.
And the Notion Thief kind of does the opposite, where your opponents don't draw anything, and then you just draw 7.
Yeah. Oh, that's so. I think what this deck makes me think of is it seems like you really are leaning into the assumption that there's going to be multiple heuristic studies out.
Yeah. Which is a very safe assumption to make at the moment.
Super safe assumption. And planning around that, instead of your window being this like turn 1, turn 2, super tiny sliver where you're able to just like absolutely storm off in a single turn, more expecting there to be this culmination of momentum that the entire pod tries to use as their collective window. And how can you win on top of or win through legitimately like 20 counter spells?
Right. And if you look at like the sorceries package of this deck, you can go, oh, you're playing Rogsai. It's a normal deck. And then you go to the creatures package, you're like, there's something a little off
that's
here.
pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I think instants were pretty normal too. I'm running Commandeer. We're a little bit higher on blue cards, so having the slot and just, I think it's pretty good, especially when you have that many cards in hand.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to find those 2 blue cards. Nothing too crazy aside from that. Artifacts were good. We're on the One Ring because we're not on Nas, we're not on Necro. It just, more draw engines are fine. Mirror Maid and Copy Enchantment, of course. And I think we're +1 or +2 lands or +1.5 lands. So we're on Sinking the Stupor for that extra blue card, and then +1 land.
Does this deck remind you of Rogtev at all? Because I feel like you have a really similar conversation with other players when you sit down. When you're playing Rogtev at the charity tournament, I heard 100 people ask, are you on like Ad-Naz? And you're always like, no, I'm not on Ad-Naz.
Yeah.
I'm not Necro. I'm not any of the, I'm not Bolus or anything. And they all go, yeah, okay. And then you just storm off, resolve a breach. That was, I think, kind of what brought you to Artist Talent. And then they'd look at your whole deck and be like, wow, he's really not on any of these.
Yeah, in that deck, it's kind of hard to be on Nas when you're on Hoarding Broodlord, Razaketh, and Obliterate, which is 24 mana between 3 cards. In this deck, I've had these conversations with players already. I sit down in the deck, they're like, oh, Rogsai, you're seat 1, whatever. I said, look, I'm going to generate a lot of mana, as all Rogsai decks do, but believe me or not, I'm not on Nas, I'm not on Necro. I'm here for a good time, I'm chilling. I'm trying to participate in this heuristic meta just as much as any other deck and try to play responsibly. I think the interesting thing about this deck is the responsible play pattern, and not trying to jam or just storm into opponents' draw engines.
Yeah, I think especially with I think the fact that misdirection is becoming a more ubiquitous card with cEDH games is a good indication that now is a bad time to push for a win early, because if you are hoping to have one more counter spell than the table and each deck is running one more counter spell than it used to, you just can't do it.
I have to give credit on a unrelated note to so this deck, the name is Thief X2. So we've got Notion Thief. You know what the other one is?
Is it Aura Thief?
Yeah. It's on Aura Thief. So it's a 4-mana creature. It's an elemental with flying. It's a 2/2. I know it's on the screen. I can see it there, but I can't read it from here. It says whenever it dies or is put into a graveyard from play, but I think the Oracle text is when it dies. When it dies, gain control of all enchantments.
Oh man, that's so gross.
So this is a card that's really cool, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, there's probably an easy way to kill it with like Phyrexian Tower, but we also have sort of uncounterable or things that are hard to respond to with Diabolic Intent, Infernal Plunge, Calling the Weak.
Oh man,
because those are sacrificed as a cost of casting that spell. So even if you counter that spell, it's gone, and the triggered ability's on the stack.
Dang.
So
I'm gonna have to start running Stifle against you, dude.
Overall, I have to give credit to Freedom Waffle. We were talking about this card shortly after Snowy Summit, and he's like, "Hey, this is a 4-cost. You could put this in Glarb." And I was like, "Yeah, but I don't have any way to kill it. Like, I don't have any way to kill it. I can't even use like Abrupt Decay on it. I can Rollick it, but that doesn't trigger the ability. That just exiles it. So in this deck, it actually makes a ton of sense because I can kill it.
That's really interesting. Well, one, I think, what a great example of how deep into this mid-game meta we are.
It's real bad. It's also real bad. That's the other thing. I want to be clear. I'm not a fan of where we're at. I do not like this. This whole, I'm just going to copy Ristic. I'm going to have a Ristic. I'm going to have more Ristics than you. My Ristics are better than yours. It's not fun. I don't really feel like I'm playing Magic. But if it's winning games, we have to do what wins, right? We're cEDH players. We're tournament grinders. We have to do what wins.
Yeah, it reminds me of Jason put me onto that Joking 101 kind of video. Shout out to Joking 101. I feel like it kind of altered my brain chemistry. He was talking about, like, are you playing to win or are you playing to prove a point? Both in a tournament setting, totally valid, totally reasonable. They are both fantastic motivations to be playing. If you are playing to win, though, you are playing as many Ristic studies as you can.
Yep.
And
until it eats a ban.
Until it gets a ban. And Or Thief is a lot of Ristics. It's a lot of Ristics.
I just imagine a world where I like scoop up like an exploration from someone, and I'm like, I'm Rogside. What do I do with exploration? I guess I'll have an additional land, like, or a Sylvan Library or something. You know, it's just crazy. Yeah, I think the point about do you play to prove a point or do you play to win? Shout out, play to win. It's something I think about when I build decks like this. I am not trying to prove a point with this because the point I think is stupid. I don't like this. I don't think this is contributing in a positive way to the meta, and I'm not like happy about it. I also feel like, you know, the name, it's like wrong side. The whole thing feels wrong. But if it wins, you know, who am I to say anything about it? So,
and then also, at some point, like, the meta is going to reach this fulcrum where people can only steal so many Ristic studies, and then something else is going to have to enter the arena. Something that either kind of like you're talking about, you built Glarb in such a way that it doesn't really like interact with Ristic at least as much as a lot of traditional decks via cards like Exploration or Burgeoning, or some commander who's just going to be its own Ristic that lets you just always be there.
What's the Sultai guy that's like the draw hate commander that's banned?
The banned? Oh man, you know, if you're watching this video and you know the name of it, hit in the comments. I honestly don't know.
I think it's Leovold.
It could.
I always want to say Ludovic, but that's not correct. I'm pretty sure it's Leovold.
I'm going to assume you're correct.
But it's kind of like Notion Thief on a commander. I could see something like that coming back with the bans or with the unbans or whatever they announced in April. But we saw this pattern with Dockside leading up to the ban, where if you weren't running Dockside, you were at least trying to copy it. And if you weren't trying to copy it, it's like, are you really trying to win?
Yeah.
And it got so bad that we were in the Clone Wars. We were trying to clone Dockside because it's just the best thing in the format.
Yeah.
Now, Ristic is the best thing in the format, so everyone's trying to clone it. And that makes total sense. But it's going to come to a head where either stuff has to get unbanned so that Ristic is less powerful, which seems impossible to me, or Ristic is going to eat a ban, and then this whole meta is going to shift and reset again. And I don't think many people will complain, but this is where we are right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the kind of like going back to like the thesis of this, you know, kind of like in the middle of the week where our
we've been talking about this forever,
where our heads are at.
Yeah.
I think I'd agree with you. I think we are, you know, alike with a lot of cEDH tournament grinders right now, in that I have no idea where the meta is going to be 1 or 2 months from now.
Right.
And so right now I'm just trying to draw as many cards as I can.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that will prevent me from punting. But who knows? It's
Speaking of punting, you want to talk to me about Kinnan?
Oh yeah, if you want to go ahead and pull up, you're mentioning Freedom Waffle earlier.
Yeah, no shade to you, but let's talk about what's going on with Kinnan.
No, plenty of shade to me. One of the things, you know, for instance, we were talking about Lumra earlier. Love the deck. I think it is the cEDH deck that I've been most consistently passionate about and having fun with over these last few months. But boy, is that deck easy to punt with. You just have so little room to kind of recover. And with the Ristic Study meta we're in, it's so easy to get outpaced or outvalued by your opponents. Even when you're playing this like super cool, super like turbo deck that's like, you know, just spitting out like 30 lands a turn.
I think one of the advantages Luma has is that it doesn't inherently trigger Ristic with the land actions and stuff like that. Obviously, you still have to cast the commander or get the commander into play. So you're going to play some cards that trigger Ristic, but a lot of the play pattern doesn't. So you kind of have that advantage, but you're right. It is kind of like when your card's down or you're trying to not really have cards in your hand at all. So if you compare your hand, you're like, I've got 1 or 2 cards in hand as Lumra, and then I've got 2 blue players or 3 blue players. You're like, what the hell do I do?
Yeah, it is so easy to be far behind, which I think is a really interesting challenge. But specifically as, you know, trying to transition from proving the point of, I think it's an incredible commander that more people should play because it's a lot of fun, towards like playing to win. One of those things I've had to tackle with is when I've been playing for like 8-10 hours, when I'm going against like the best of the best that like the Denver scene has to offer, there is just no room for mistakes, which means even if you do something as small as like countering the wrong spell or playing you know, your artifacts in the wrong order, you can so quickly end up really far behind, which is why I have recently been really attracted to Freedom Waffle's no bad cards list, with the exception of Endurance.
But he largely runs the same strategy of Clever Impersonator, Copy Enchantment, Mirror Maid, that sort of thing.
And with the addition of we at CriticalEDH have started slotting in Astral Dragon.
Yeah, so again, not a huge fan of where we're at. However, one of the best tools in a Kinnan list is a non-creature that can be flipped into, or sorry, non-human creature that can be flipped into. Astral Dragon, which when it enters creates 2 copies of any non-land, non-creature, something like that.
All I know is that it hits Ristic and it hits Smothering Tide,
Yeah.
which are like 2 of the best cards in Kinnan, and he can only run 1 of them.
Yep.
But I think that's such a, I mean, I think that kind of like typifies my mentality picking up this list, and it's we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but we have a 1K coming up this weekend, and it's something, one of the things I want to be testing out tonight, is you can either play a deck like Lumra that flies under the radar and doesn't really even play this whole Ristic Study game, or, I mean, if you want to play the Ristic Study game, you better bring every single possible Ristic Study in this format, and I think this Kinnan list does a really, really good job of coming out swinging. In
For sure. Regard. I mean, it did in Swiss, and he was first out of Swiss with points. What is going on here? Thank you.
Yeah, Jason's been doing really, really well at the local level 7s. The thing I have my eye on with this.
He won the last 2. Jason won the last 2. I guess we would just call it locals tournaments. They're like $10 buy-in, up to 30 players, something like that. Maybe a few more, but he picked up this list, played it as is for the first one, won, and he goes, I hate this deck, it's so dumb. And then the second one, which was last weekend, he goes, okay, I'm gonna play it again. He made the Astral Dragon change, and then I just hear, guys, I made Smothering Tide and Ristic Study, and I had another Ristic Study from a copy of something else. And you know, it's a Jason impression because he starts with guys, but yeah, I mean, he won that one too, pretty handily. I think we both, or at least I did okay. I don't know how you did, but yeah, I think having not had any experience on Kinnan and then all of a sudden you just win 2 tournaments is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's Jason is a really, really good player. So I think he could probably play a wide range of decks and do really good. But the thoroughness with which he was in control of the pods that he was in, I think really kind of solidify. We've been having the conversation over the course of the last few weeks, like what we think our top 3 is. And Kinnan is You know, I don't care if people think if it's number 1 or number 2, but it better be one of those. Like, it is strong right now, at least in Denver.
I think before Snowy Summit, I would have said that it was probably 1 was TNK, 2 was Kinnan, 3 was TNT.
Mm-hmm.
And then after Snowy Summit, I said it's after Snowy Summit. I said directly after Snowy Summit, I said it's TNK and Kinnan are 1 and 2. And I said I think 3 is just kind of a crapshoot. Whoever 3 is, I don't think it's TNK or TNT anymore. And then after Jason won locals the first time, I said nope, number 1's Kinnan, no question. And then 2 is TNK, and then again 3 is whatever. And I still stand by that right now. I think Kinnan's number 1.
Yeah, so the lesson I'm taking from it is, you know, I don't know if I'm going to be like a Kinnan stan or like a Kinnan main from here on out, but I do think it holds such a prominent place in the meta right now that I have to know how to play it. I have to know how I play around it, because even if once I learn those lessons, I never touch the deck ever again, it is one of the decks to beat right now.
Yeah, and it's going to be ironed in your brain forever on how the play patterns work and how to play against it. Or you see a certain number of cards on their board and you see 3 or 4 cards in your hand, and you can start to spin the wheels of, okay, I can start to presume what they have and sort of what they're looking to do. So I think as part of growing as a player, it's really important to learn these decks, especially the top decks, and see where things are at now, why the good players are playing them, things like that.
Yeah, it reminds me, I think I have a similar relationship with Kinnan right now, kind of what you were talking about with Rogsai, where I don't think it's necessarily the space I want to be moving in as a player. Like, I don't like look, 3 or 4 months down the road and I'm like, oh, I hope Kinnan is still good. But I do think that I really want to invest in myself as a player, and I'm interested in exploring the depth of how far this like Ristic Study meta can really go. And this deck, Rogsai and TNK, seem best equipped to handle it. And so very interested in exploring other decks, very interested in continuing to try new stuff. But as I'm trying to more consistently make top 16 and then hopefully take down a tournament at some point, if I want to do that, I think I have to know how Kinnan works.
Yeah. I had this experience at locals last weekend where a lot of people were surprised that I was bringing Rogsai. And they're like, oh, I thought you were going to bring Glarb. And I'm like, I'm not a Glarb player. I mean, I guess I had most recent success on Glarb, but I'm personally more interested in being a good player than I am being like a particular deck player.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if you feel the same way about like Lumra or whatever.
Yeah, I very much feel the same way. There's 2 bears inside of me. And one of them, right, I think I talk about this a lot. I think cEDH kind of has hipster roots, being connected to casual.
Yeah.
It's a very brewy format. I mean, it's singleton. Like even the most popular deck is running, 99 or 98 different cards. Like that naturally lends itself to creativity. And so I think there's this desire to earn your place in the top 16 through innovation and through creativity, and honestly through novelty. I think it's cool to be doing something new. It's cool to be one of the few Glarb players who have been able to pierce through.
And don't get me wrong, I appreciate that. I really like that I was able to have a good run with the deck. Do I see it as like the top deck in the format right now? Not really. I think it's good and it lends to my play style super well.
Yeah.
But if I need to continue to grow as a player, I need to continue to push the limits of what I feel is possible for me. So
I don't know if you feel this way about Glarb, but the way I feel about Lumra is I think I will be able to consistently take that deck to the top 16. I will be able to take it to top 4s after I spend the time, I do the work of learning these meta decks, get my fundamentals down, and once I have used all that experience to improve myself as much as I can then take those lessons from the meta decks, from playing 100 different decks that are all partner commanders into something that is more like specifically up my alley, that has been a passion project for years. And that's why I also am sometimes not a huge fan of this Ristic Study meta, but I think in the same way that in every cEDH game, you grind until you find your window. I think as a Lumra player or as a Glarb player, I still see us in a more meta-narrative sense, grinding until we find that window.
yeah, for sure. All right, so where does that leave us with the sort of rest of the week? And we have a couple days up until the next tournament. So what are your plans for the next couple days?
I am specifically tonight at our local store, Enchanted Grounds, where the 1K we're playing at this Saturday is. I'm going to try and play as much Kinnan as I can to see if it can survive my terrible decision making. And if not, then I'm going to try and on Friday get some T&K games in to kind of refresh myself with the list so I'm comfortable with it. And I am all about doing really, really well at that 1K coming up this week because we were able to, with collaboration of Top Deck and the Snowy Summit 2 tournament organizers, get points for Snowy Summit 2, which means I am now spitting distance of the top 100 for the championship series. And so I am really, really trying to crack that window. That's a personal goal that I have. I don't know if there's enough big tournaments left or if I'm good enough right now to kind of make it to the Invitational. But I think if I can make top 100 for the series, I would be more than proud of myself. I would be ecstatic.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about my positioning right now, points wise. But looking at this event, I think that these smaller local events are really important and a really easy way to garner that sort of experience and especially just build a relationship with the locals and say like I'm still out here playing and grinding and I'm not like I don't know where I was going with that, but either way, I think practice is kind of what we're looking to do for the next couple days, including today. Yeah, I'm probably going to play Rockslide for a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to stick with it for the tournament. I feel like I'm prepped on enough decks where I can kind of make a game day decision about what I'm playing for the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked, and I think pretty aptly about how you view the third most popular deck being based on whatever like the best players had for breakfast that morning.
Yeah,
and so I think as someone who knows you, I think you can pretty confidently like wait to make that decision until day of. But it sounds like you're also trying to like put some feelers out to get as much information as you can so that when it comes to make that decision of what you're bringing with, you're able to make the most informed decision possible.
Yeah, I had a couple of my tournament wins where one was on Nidris and then the other one was on Glarb. Both I had made pretty serious game day decisions, either about the deck specifically or about cards in the deck. And I think that just kind of is who I am as a person. I'm a very last minute, no planning type person where I will let things stew inside my head for forever and then just say, oh, fuck it, I need to put it in or I need to play this. And for better or worse, sometimes it screws me, but a lot of times it works out okay.
You got to ride that wave you're on, man. Especially like no one wants to be, 2 games into Swiss thinking, oh, God, I wish I had played da-da-da instead,
Right.
Because then you have 2 games left that you don't even, you don't want to be there. You're not having fun. And even if those changes you make day of the tournament don't necessarily result in a higher win percentage, I am always a fan of, like, if you're going to bet on anyone, bet on yourself.
Yeah, I'm not I don't want to be sitting in the third round of Swiss and going, shit, I should have put that card in.
No!
I'd rather put it in and go, well, I took out something that was probably not that consequential anyway that I might have seen as a flex slot. So I think go with your gut on that one.
Yeah, that's super funny. The reason I'm playing Kinnan is because I had a dream about it Saturday night.
you were messaging the group chat. You're like, bro, I could not stop dreaming green and blue.
Like, guys, I had like a vision. So we'll see if that dream turns to a nightmare on Saturday.
Right.
But I think for me, that's just kind of where my head's at. And even if I perform terribly, you got to play the best decks at some point. So even if it's a short run, I'm looking forward to getting the experience.
There's a couple more things I want to touch on before we close out this video. One, just details about the event for anyone that might be going. It's going to be capped at 48-ish. I think Jeff, or the store owner, said that if we do hit that 48 cap, he'll just accept walk-ups, and like that's fine. But the event itself online is capped at 48. The pricing is pretty good.
They always have great pricing.
I mean, I'll link it in the description here, but fully proxied, no paper slips in front of cards, but if you want to just use regular proxies, that's fine, so long as they're not counterfeit.
If anyone is in the CriticalEDH Discord and is looking to come, but you know the only proxies you have you like printed out at home, feel free to like hit us up. We both have super large piles of proxies. The community always shows up for these because we
we
want
want
as many people to play.
We want people to play. It's not we're not trying to create any sort of barrier to entry. Obviously, there's a cost to get in, but aside from that, like that goes towards the prizing and things like that.
But like I need you to have a Rhystic study so that my Mirror Maid works. Like,
like it doesn't work without that.
Come on, man.
So I think the top prizing is going to be 1K cash and then a tropical island, and they always do promos for everyone that enters, and like the top cut, I think it might be top 13 this time. Top 13 is pretty fun because if you're first out of Swiss, you get a buy, and then the remaining 12 players fights for those 3 seats in the finals, which is pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
So we talked about practice, we talked about the event. What else is there to say? What else do we have?
I think that's mostly it. Something I think kind of some Aether Drift rumblings, Hashaton. At least the parts of the web that I'm on seems to be doing all right. But I've heard some rumors that Ketramos may be really overperforming.
Interesting. I think that was Gold Saber talking about Ketramos, and I know he gives me like big 2-color energy type guy where he's like he'll find something and he'll just play that 2-color pile or 3-color pile.
The first color is gold and the second color is Sabertooth.
Yeah, right. I'm not ready to dive into that yet. I think that it's too much of a. I don't know. How do you copy Rhystic and Orzhov?
I don't know, but I do think that that's an example of a commander that in and of itself is just able to draw a couple cards. I don't know. I've been a Simic guy for a long time, so we'll see if anyone out there is able to make an Orzhov.
I mean, it's on my radar, right? Like, I'm not. If Gold Saber's saying it's good, he's a good player, so I'm willing to listen.
Yeah,
I'm not going to ignore him. Other than that, let's see. Next week, I guess look for another update from us next week. We're going to be finishing this tournament. We'll probably do some sort of recap for this tournament, no matter how shitty we do. And then I have a tournament at the Mana Vault in Milwaukee. Or no. Shoot.
Well, first there's Fishbowl.
See, this is what I'm saying. I can't plan ahead. The week after this is Fishbowl.
Yeah.
And we're going to that. Unfortunately, Jason's not able to go. But us, the two of us, Jay, and then our friend Dominic, we're just kind of going. So we'll probably do some like vlog content and sort of practice with the 4 of us, and that's going to be the biggest event we've been to.
Yeah, definitely be the. I think it's one of the biggest events in cEDH. Period. So we're definitely planning on getting there early. I think I
cannot wait for my Elo to tank.
Oh my god,
it's gonna go down so much.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think in the same way that we're using this 1K kind of as a way to feel the waters for what we think we'll be capable of at Fishbowl, we're also planning on just grinding a ton of games. So if you're a Denver local who's planning on being in San Diego for the tournament, or if you're any of our viewers outside of the local geographical area, we are going to be playing in the lead up.
I'll probably be wearing some sort of shirt at Fishbowl in which you can easily find me. Eric will probably be wearing some sort of beanie in which he is serving the suds.
Yeah, at the very least, you can listen, and I'll probably be either laughing or yelling really loudly.
But not like in a Wounded Satellite way, like in a way like that. Yeah.
No, I think. I'm a pretty easy guy to hear, I think. So, but either way, we'd either love for people to stop by and say hi, or if you're playing this super cool niche deck that you're planning on taking, we always love seeing new tech. And also, as we always say, tell us how to beat you. That's for sure. I still don't know how to rip the rug out from underneath Tameshi, so maybe we'll have to get someone on here to walk us through that.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that there's going to be a Tameshi at this weekend's event, so that'll be fun.
But either way, it sounds like there's a lot going on in the future to look forward to. So
this is probably the longest weekend update that we'll have. We're nearing an hour because you and I can talk for anything or for any length of time about anything.
That's true.
But in the future, hopefully these are a bit shorter, a bit more concise. But thanks for sticking with us. And
super appreciate it.
See you in the next video. Peace. Oh, God. Okay, bye now.